All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tracing the incredible journey of a sound that went from illegal parties in forgotten warehouses all the way to sold-out multi-million-dollar residencies in Las Vegas. This is the unlikely story of how electronic dance music, or EDM, completely took over the world. So when I say EDM, you probably picture the massive, almost overwhelming spectacle it became in the 2010s, right? For a good decade, electronic music wasn't just another genre, it felt like it was the dominant force in popular culture. I mean, this was the era of the superstar DJ. Guys earning millions, headlining enormous festivals like Electric Daisy Carnival. You had artists like David Guetta and Calvin Harris all over the pop charts. The sound even merged with other global phenomena, like K-pop. Think about those collabs between BTS and Steve Aoki. It was official. Dance music wasn't underground anymore. It was everywhere. So what exactly lit the fuse for this explosion? Well, a massive part of it was technology. Software like Ableton Live or FL Studio basically put a multi-million-dollar recording studio right onto your laptop. It meant that suddenly anyone, and I mean anyone with an idea, could be a producer, which just unleashed this tidal wave of new and totally innovative sounds. But here's the thing, that mainstream boom in the 2010s, that's really just the last chapter of a much, much longer and frankly, more interesting story. To really get it, we need to peel back the layers. We gotta rewind the clock, way back before the giant festivals and the celebrity DJs. Okay, so let's get into it. Before you had these huge, licensed, ticketed events in giant stadiums, you had illegal parties. You had parties in abandoned warehouses, in empty fields, especially in the United Kingdom. In the late 80s, a full-blown cultural revolution swept across Britain. They called it the Second Summer of Love. It all kicked off when a few British DJs on holiday in Ibiza stumbled upon this hypnotic new sound called acid house. They brought it back home, and by 1988, illegal raves were just exploding all over the country. Of course, the media eventually caught wind, sparked a huge moral panic, and that led directly to a government crackdown on these parties. And you have to understand, this was way more than just music, it was a counterculture. The soundtrack was acid house, with these totally alien, squelching bass lines from a little silver box called the Roland TB-303. The vibe was often fueled by the drug ecstasy, which created this intense feeling of connection and unity. That's where the scene's whole ethos came from: peace, love, unity, and respect, or plur, all symbolized by that classic iconic smiley face. But here's the twist. The sound that totally defined this British youth rebellion, it wasn't British at all. To find out where it really came from, we have to jump across the Atlantic and go even further back in time. Believe it or not, the actual DNA of pretty much all modern dance music was forged right in the industrial heartland of America. We're talking about two cities in particular, Chicago and Detroit. So picture this. It's the early 80s in Chicago. There's a nightclub called The Warehouse, which was a sanctuary for a mostly black and gay crowd. And the resident DJ, a legend named Frankie Knuckles, started experimenting. He'd take these old disco records and completely remix them live, adding these heavy, pulsing four-on-the-floor beats from a drum machine. The result was a brand new sound, made for and by this community that felt excluded from the mainstream. They called it house music. Right, named after the warehouse itself. At the same time, just a few hours away in Detroit, a whole other revolution was happening. You had these young black artists, guys like Juan Atkins, Derek May, the Belleville Three, and they were looking around at their city, at the post-industrial landscape of empty factories and urban decay. And they channeled all of that into a futuristic, robotic, kind of stark sound. They called it techno, machine music. And this is the absolutely crucial takeaway. These two bedrock genres, house and techno, they didn't just appear out of thin air. They grew out of very specific communities. Black communities, queer communities, working class communities, who were literally inventing new worlds and new soundtracks for themselves on the dance floor. But wait, even before house and techno, there was one singular track that proved, without a doubt, that electronic instruments could not just be on the dance floor, but could rule the dance floor. And for that very first spark, we have to go all the way back to Munich, Germany in 1977. The track was Donna Summer's I Feel Love, produced by the great Giorgio Moroder. When the legendary producer Brian Eno heard it for the first time, he supposedly ran into the studio where he was working with David Bowie and said, "I found the sound of the future." And you know what? He was absolutely right. It was a game changer. Moroder's goal was pretty radical for the time.
He wanted to make a hit disco track using only synthesizers. But he hit a wall. The Moog synth just couldn't make a kick drum sound with enough punch for the dance floor. So in this brilliant move, he mixed the old with the new. He hired a real drummer just to play the kick drum. And the final bit of magic? It was a total accident. An engineer hit the wrong button, added a delay effect to the bass line, and gave it that iconic, galloping rhythm we all know.
But Moroder's genius didn't stop with that track. Another one of his innovations, which can kind of be summed up by the number 17, would change nightclub culture forever. So before I Feel Love, Moroder and Summer had another massive hit called Love to Love You Baby. A record executive in the States asked for a longer version for the clubs. So what did Moroder do? He delivered a 17-minute epic. It was a smash hit, and not just because it was hypnotic, but for a really practical reason. It gave the DJ a 17-minute break to, step out for a cigarette. It accidentally helped make the DJ the star of the show. And this whole focus on the DJ and the club really gets at a deeper truth here. The dance floor has always been more than just a place to party. From the very beginning, it's been a political space. It's been a place for community. And for a lot of people, it's been a refuge. The way these spaces work has really evolved. Back in the day, a club like the Warehouse in Chicago was an implicit safe space. You didn't need signs on the wall. The community was built on a shared, unspoken understanding because they were all excluded from the mainstream. Fast forward to today, and a lot of parties for marginalized groups are very explicit about it. They use specific language like safe space. They post codes of conduct. They make their inclusive mission crystal clear. And we can't ever forget that the very right to gather and dance has always been a fight. I mean, it's kind of shocking, but in New York City, it was literally illegal for two men to dance with each other until 1971. For so many people, the simple, joyful act of dancing together has always been a form of political resistance. So, when you put all these pieces together, this incredible story emerges. It all kicks off with this wild, futuristic synthesizer experiment in a studio in Germany. That sound is then taken and completely reshaped, given its heart and its soul really, by Black and queer communities in the American Midwest who are just looking for a place to be themselves. And then it crosses the ocean again, becomes the soundtrack to this huge youth rebellion in Britain, which then lights the fuse for its final transformation into the global mainstream force that took over the entire world. It's just such a powerful history. And it kind of leaves us with this question, right? Beyond the billion-dollar industry, beyond the light shows and the spectacle, what is this all really about? And I think it reminds us that underneath it all, there's this fundamental, almost primal human need to find your people, to feel free, and just for a little while to disappear into a crowd on the dance floor.